For regular in-depth defence news and analysis, visit www.defencei.co.uk. The DefenceEye podcast is brought to you by City Forum.
Hi, and welcome to the DefenceEye podcast. We're less than a week away from the DSEI Defence Show in London, Stocklands, a major feature of the defence calendar in the UK. And myself and Tim Ripley, we're just going to mull over and discuss some of the issues and potentially some of the things that we'll see over the next week. Even if it is an international show, of course, a key issue about DSEI is the UK MOD looking at their requirements and companies hoping to bid into UK programmes. So, Tim, in terms of the UK and DSEI, what do you think some of the immediate issues we will see over the 4 days of the show?
Well, of course, the big theme of the show is implementing the SDR, the Strategic Defence Review, which came out in June and had all the sort of requirements, a shopping list for new submarines, planes, vehicles, munitions, all that stuff. And the Ministry of Defence is working through that document as we speak, officials and military commanders, and they're trying to prioritise which ones they spend their money on first and how much they spend on specific amounts for specific programmes. This is called the Defence Investment Plan. In old money, that's called a spending round, where everybody puts their programmes on the table and the military chiefs, the civil servants and the ministers make the cut, and they say, we want a bit of that and a bit of that and a bit of that, but not that and not that. So that process is ongoing, and all the defence companies obviously are very interested in whether their products will make the cut, how much they're going to get from these programmes, and also foreign investors will be interested in which companies should they put their money in that's going to give them a return in the immediate term.
But I know when we've spoken, one of the issues seems to be that despite apparently in the spring statement, significant increases in the defence budget, then a pledge from the Prime Minister to get to 2.5% of GDP by 2027, with then an aspiration for 3.5% later. I think both of us are picking up the fact that industry is saying, where are the orders?
Well, I mean, obviously there's a bureaucratic issue with that Defence Investment Plan process that they're still working through it. But also, I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at the news and that the pressure that the Treasury is under at the moment with borrowing and tax and all those issues that are bedeviling the government. And when it comes to the point of, is Miss Reeves, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, actually going to spend the money right now on defence rather than pensions or welfare or whatever it is, that's another round of decisions that are pending. And you know, we're in a very tight fiscal situation at the moment with the government, you know, breaking all its borrowing requirements. Spending is under real pressure and something might have to give. I mean, you know, the government are seriously talking about tax rises across the board.
So, Tim, and I'll do spoiler alert, I think the chances of the government honouring its defence pledges is getting slimmer by the day. Do you think we will get to that 2.5% of GDP by 2027, or do you think there will be a massive fudge?
Well, I mean, the potential for fudge is enormous. I mean, they have various options to how to do that. Of course, the easiest way to do that is to delay the takeoff in the spending. I mean, you know, various Treasury graphs have shown a sort of steady increase from now until it gets to the 2027 and at the end of the decade. And in classic Treasury terms, they just fudge that glide path and make it sharper later, or promise to make it sharper later. And of course, that sharper later never happens.
But of course, then, if you're the services, and let's just look at the Navy, Type 23 frigates falling off the cliff because they're ancient. You look at the Army, still based around the FV432 family from the early 1960s. They can't really delay modernisation, can they? Or they will just look increasingly antiquated and incapable, won't they?
Yes, I mean, this has happened before. This is you know, we've been here before. When something has to give, those modernisation programs go or push back. I mean, we have high-profile investments in dreadnought submarines, GCAP, the future fighter aircraft, more astute-class submarines, AUKUS, all those high-profile things that have impact on jobs and the local economy in key parts of the country. Those things are going to take the money. And when it comes to whether some army battalion drives around in an older armoured personnel carrier for 5 more years, it's a no-brainer. They have to drive around in older vehicles for 5 more years. So this is the way it works.
And I don't disagree. I think despite previous pledges that Land Command, the Army, was going to get one of the biggest uplifts in its procurement budget, I think when it comes to a General Walker, Raleigh Walker, when he goes to the meetings and says, here are my plans, I suspect he's going to be told, GCAP and AUKUS have eaten your sandwiches.
Obviously, I mean, they are the high-profile programs that have real-world implications for jobs in towns and cities across the UK. And they are voters who obviously have an influence on what the government does. And at the moment, it needs loads of voters, and will need them more over the next 3 or 4 years as the election gets closer. It's the reality of politics and economics coming together.
And I think one other thing which is often, should we say, ignored or misunderstood is both GCAP and AUKUS are underwritten by treaties. They're not MOUs. They're not very general, let's think about working together. There are treaties ratified by the various parliaments and legislatures. You know, somewhere in the bowels of the House of Commons, there will be a tube with a sheet of vellum inscribed with oak gall ink saying Britain says we will honour this. That's not something which a spending round can easily change, because you do that, it's been 50 years since the UK, from an Australian point of view, treated Australia absolutely awfully, and New Zealand and the rest of the Commonwealth, when the UK joined the European Economic Community. And it's taken 50 years plus to build back the relationship with Australia so that the Australians can actually begin to trust the UK. If the UK suddenly says, AUKUS, forget about it, that will destroy the UK's reputation in Asia for the next 50 years, if not more.
I mean, they're also underpinned by contracts between the British, Japanese, Australian, Italian governments, and underpinning contracts between the various contractors in those companies. So that web of contracts is equally difficult to break without major consequences. So those programs will take up an increasing amount of money and suck in resource from those less priority programs. I mean, there's a famous quote attributed to General Sir David Richards where he coined the phrase Belgium with nukes, that increasing amount of your defence budget goes on your nuclear weapons programs, and you end up with a conventional army, navy, air force equivalent to Belgium. He was trying to say that on his watch, that's not going to happen because I'm going to be, a valiant steward of Britain's armed forces. But 15 years on from his time as Chief of Defence Staff, that looks like it's coming to pass.
And the Army looks a far less capable body than it was 15, let alone 20 and 30 years ago. And it is still pursuing modernisation, where we've both seen programmes started in the 2000s still have not delivered. Which brings us perhaps to the next one. We are expecting a big song and a dance about the initial operating capability of the Ajax family of fighting vehicles. What do we reckon?
Well, the MOD claims that they've solved the problems, they've signed off the safety cases, they're taking delivery of vehicles, and now is the time to make a big song and dance about it, to offer these vehicles to export companies. Now, obviously, it's a very controversial program. It's been mired in delays and technical problems, and let's see how convincing they are with their case, their information, their promotion of the product, their access to the vehicles, their access to the armed forces, so we can actually see if this progress is real. So the jury's out.
And as I think both of us have seen, not least at the previous DSEI, but also at the DVD show up in a Millbrook Proving Ground, the Ajax is on display there, or the Ajax family vehicles have always had the rear door firmly padlocked, and media access inside has been zero. And I can't believe it's because there is anything particularly secret about what's inside there, but they've just not wanted the media to get in.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is a as we've all covered extensively over the past 5-10 years, This program is mired in delays, technical problems, missing targets, and it has acquired a sensitivity that across the Ministry of Defence, the defence industry, and people have just not wanted to talk about it, not wanted to engage, and they've been very worried that if they say the wrong thing or show the wrong thing off, then it's in trouble. So up to now, it's been under wraps, and we now have the point where it's show and tell. They've got to prove it, that it actually works.
I find it interesting that there are certain, and this is coming from different parts of the MOD, different parts of the Army, there's been a very consistent set of lines to take. Finest armoured vehicle ever to enter service for the British Army. Every problem is either never existed, which is interesting because we had the Sheldon report, or has been completely solved. And I'm hearing this all over the shop, and that it should be regarded as a success. And when I pointed out that, okay, they announced IOC, maybe Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, it will have been over 15 years since the Ajax design was selected. Mm-hmm. That is more than 2.5 times the length of World War II.
Oh, yeah.
If that's a success, please then show me, Grok, show me what failure is.
Well, I mean, it is a major problem for them because the vehicles they ordered back in 2009 and then put on contract in 2014, the configuration, the number and mix of different platforms in the Ajax family, the requirement for what the Army wants to do with them has fundamentally changed. And as well as having an issue over the actual technical ability of the vehicle, specification of the vehicle, the Army has various plans for how to redeploy those vehicles into new and different units, organizations, and roles. And that is also controversial because that costs money within the Army budget. And do they have the money to do that? Is that approved? So, we have to see how that unfolds as well. There's two parts of this, obviously the vehicles themselves, but how the British Army is going to structure itself to use them to best advantage, and whether they need any modifications for new roles, which again costs even more money. So it's very clear that the Ajax program is not quite out of the woods yet. So even though they can declare success, it's not quite there yet.
And as we both have been hearing, there is this plan to replace Warrior in the mechanised armoured infantry battle groups with, let's call it Ares Plus. It's a stretched APC version, which one prototype, to my knowledge, has been built to test it for Australia, where it failed. Yeah, this, we believe, will be unveiled at DSEI, but you raise a very interesting point, which is there is no provision within the existing contract to change the mix of vehicles between the various variants. And if they are going to be equipping 4 infantry battle groups with an Ares type variant, they've only ordered 93, so they would have to order a minimum of 150 to 200 extra. And as you say, where's the budget for that?
Yep. So let's see how it all unfolds. We'll be interested to see what General Walker, what the leadership of General Dynamics, and what the Defence Procurement Minister, Ms. Eagle, make of this all. And let's see if it survives contact with publicity.
And you mentioned the Defence Procurement Minister. What are we picking up about government attendance at the show?
Well, for what we understand, Miss Eagle is going to open the show on Tuesday morning with big cheer for defence industry, defence exports and defence investment. Then we're expecting the chiefs of the armed forces, Air Marshal Harvey Smith, the new chief of the Air Staff, General Walker, and of course the new First Sea Lord, Gwyn Jenkins. Also the National Armaments Director, interim or maybe confirmed, Andy Start.
And we're both hearing that actually, having seen a failure of the the selection process, there is a very high possibility that CEO of DNS and interim National Arms Director will be confirmed in post, raising the question of whether they will now have to select a new head of DNS.
Yeah, I mean, the leadership of the MOD is in a degree of flux. I mean, first of all, we've just seen this week Admiral Radakin has left and Air Chief Marshal Knighton has taken over. The permanent Undersecretary, David Williams, is due to go within weeks, which leaves a major challenge of leadership at the top of the ministry. How are they going to take over the reins amid a period of great organisational change? We have this new structure, the Quad, which has the Permanent Undersecretary, the Chief of Defence Staff, the Chief of Defence Nuclear, and the National Armaments Director being the supremos, leading the four pillars of the Ministry of Defence. And even before they are up and running properly, a new bunch of people are coming in to take over leading them. So it's a very challenging time to be a MOD leader at the moment.
In terms of some of the other things we think we're going to see or hear at DSEI, I'm hearing, for example, there will be a new mock-up of Tempest, the BA systems designed for the Global Combat Air Programme. Anything else you've been picking up on the grapevine?
Well, of course, the big sort of issue, of course, is the presence of the Israeli companies and Israeli delegations. The government has already banned Israeli government delegations, and there's a lot of uncertainty about Israeli companies and Israeli pavilions, and that's all linked in, of course, to the demonstrations that may or may not happen. It all adds a degree of uncertainty about the execution of the show. Israel has been a major exhibitor at the show for many, many, many years, and they are, their status has a major question mark over them.
I suppose what, from a personal point of view, is quite interesting, especially the last DSEI 2 years ago, but even the one 4 years ago, the level of protesters was remarkably limited. Last year, I think it was just the one old lady standing in the road opposite the DLR station, quietly chanting. There was no significant protest, whereas it was 6 or 8 years ago, I remember protesters cutting through the windows on DLR trains and handcuffing themselves round the central pillars of the carriages, meaning they had to cut the roofs off the DLR trains to free them. Don't know about you, Tim, but I suspect, because we are now in, let's just call it the Gaza phase, I suspect this year may have a significantly higher level of protest.
Undoubtedly. I mean, it is the issue at the moment for Britain's protesting class. It's, these things go through phases: climate change, the arms trade, other things, China, Uyghur refugee, and these things all go in cycles. And at the moment, we seem to be at peak Gaza protest. But I mean, there's also sort of maybe they might not go for an anti-DSEI protest because of their main focus appears to be to get the government to drop the ban on Palestine action, and portraying themselves as peaceful and responsible protesters with retired school teachers and grannies rather than aggressive action would suit their narrative at the moment, to try and convince the wider public and media that these are not zealot disruptors, but just ordinary folk giving their views on the world. And it would be counterproductive in that narrative to try and do a sort of full-on assault on the building, if you understand what I mean.
I take your point entirely. At the moment, my gut feeling is there will be enough people who will believe they have to be spraying red paint on an Israeli arms company stand, who will try and infiltrate. And at one level, I think you can look at comments issued by the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, yesterday, where he said in effect it was disgusting that such a show was being held in London, and it doesn't represent London. And you can sort of see those comments as almost telling protesters, please have a go.
Yeah, I mean, but he does that every time. I mean, he just said that every show. So, what's new? So we'll see. Well, we're in for an interesting week, and kicking off on Monday with potentially the launch of the Defence Industrial Strategy. Then we're into the show. So we're going to be there every day at the show, bringing reports and online video clips and news reports on our own website, defenceeye.co.uk. So let's enjoy the show.
And I would only add one thing. As long as the Elizabeth line keeps working, because at the moment we are facing the serious prospect that railway union strike mean that both the DLR and the London Underground will not be functioning for pretty much the whole of next week.
So it's going to be fun.
So that's great. We will keep the reports coming through the days of DSEI, and we will be putting things up online as and when they happen. Thanks for watching.